Hey
Woo!
everybody, we are so happy that you have come to this little video. Sarah and I would like to share with you all um, just us explaining, and mostly Sarah, I think, explaining the journey from our very general competencies down to our tasks and learning outcomes. So Sarah Davila is here with us today to tell us about that. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, no, it's my absolute pleasure. If there's something that I love and I will just talk endlessly about, it's absolutely standards. I think everybody knows that at this point. All right, so I'm going to open up a PowerPoint that I just lost because just like every other teacher, you have that moment where it's time and now you can't find what you're working with. Okay, there it is. I
You know what?
found it. Thank you for
Let's,
being patient. Yep,
yeah, no, that's great.
I got it. You ready?
Yep. Standards to specific outcomes.
All right, so let's talk about the journey. So everyone, I think there were a couple of questions about some of the decisions that we made, and I wanted to give a little insight into why we've done things in the Cartilla document for the standards the way that we have done that. So I've put together this little presentation to kind of walk you through it, and we're going to start all the way at the top here. So the first thing that you'll notice when you look into the standards from pre-K all the way through 12, you'll see that we have standards for listening, speaking, reading, writing, and mediation. And we have really carefully thought about what kind of standards the students need to do and what will help create the best progression in learning. You'll notice as you walk through all of the standards, there's a lot of connection between the standards year over year, so that as students are advancing, they're coming back to that knowledge and working it again. This is part of that process of learning that we're all very familiar with, where our students need some repetition and some redundancy in that learning to create internalization. So for those of you who are big fans of the neuroscience of learning, that will be very, very familiar. And for those of you that just know language teaching, that's probably very familiar too. So one of the first things that you'll see, we're going to use listening as an example here, is the listening general standard. And you'll notice that the listening, yep.
Can I just point out that when we're looking at this, we have three columns. On the left, we have the concept, general standard, specific standard, objective, task, and outcome. The middle column are examples of those.
Yeah,
And the
that's
column
correct.
on the right-hand side tells you a little bit more about what they are, right?
It's so much better working with a team for exactly this reason. Yes, that is correct. So over here, this is what we're talking about. We'll go from general standard all the way through the outcome. In the middle is that example standard we've pulled out for you, and then in the final the final column is a little bit about the aim and the purpose, or what that's designed to do. Thank you, Mary. Is there anything else that I forgot here?
Nope, I just thought I wanted to point that out just in
Yeah,
case.
that's great. No worries. All right. So starting back up here at the top then. So we have, we pulled the listening general standard as an example here, and you've probably seen that standard already. This is from the early years. So I believe this was one of the grade 1 or 2 standards. And don't quote me on that. I've worked with a lot of standards over the last couple of weeks. So here you'll notice that we're using a can-do formula, can identify sounds and understand familiar words and basic phrases spoken slowly and clearly. This is a very general standard. It's very high level. It is a can-do statement. It's what we expect our students to be able to do by the time they have fully mastered this standard. And as we know with standards-based learning, and I think I should point this out before we move on, this is not something that students will learn in one experience, but this is something that students will learn over the course of working with the standards-based materials that we're preparing. From that general standard, we've also provided some substandards or some specific standards. So, for example, identifying sounds and understanding familiar words and basic phrases can break down to recognizing basic words and phrases. One of the first things that we'll specifically need to teach, words and phrases. You'll notice that the format here is a little bit different. We did not use the can-do format. For our specific standards, these are descriptive statements that provide specific details. Some of you may be thinking like, well, couldn't this be a can-do statement? Can't I add can-do here? Yes, you absolutely could. This 100% could be a can-do statement. And in fact, in the CEFR, there are frequently can-do statements all the way up and down. But with an understanding of the Panamanian context and the teachers that we're working with in Panama, we wanted to be sure that when teachers were looking at their standards, that they could immediately recognize if this was a general standard or if it was a specific standard. And in the interest of making that super clear for our educators, we decided to use just the descriptor or that basic description of the skill rather than a full can-do statement. This will also help teachers stay clear when we begin to introduce objectives into the work that we're doing as well. So we want our teachers to recognize the difference between those general and specific standards so that they can also understand how objectives, tasks, and outcomes fit into the learning. And this is all important for you because you are responsible for the objectives, the tasks, and the outcomes that we're about to develop for the curriculum. So let me show you how that breaks down. You're coming into this, you're thinking, all right, we know the general standard is that they can identify sounds and understand familiar words and basic phrases spoken clearly. We know that the specific standard here is to recognize basic words and phrases. So how do then we bring that to life for our students in the classroom? Well, now we need to think of some specific objectives. And many of you, I know you've worked with objectives for years. We want to make sure that those objectives are specific, relevant, achievable, measurable, and time bound. So this is work that the students might do in one lesson or maybe one or two lessons over a few days, but these are the more granular objectives. Here, for example, we interpreted basic words and phrases into recognizing for receptive skills, recognizing hello and goodbye and how are you. Those are some very common basic words and phrases in the action of greeting or closing a conversation. As well as receptive, we want this to be receptive is more of just listening, not necessarily interacting. So this is why we want them to be able to recognize it. Same with this classroom instruction. That's a basic word and phrase. This might be a new lesson that we're doing with our students. And here we need them to recognize, open your book or take out your notebook or copy the words. So they're recognizing those basic words and phrases. Another objective, maybe this is the third lesson in a series. My students can recognize, good job, well done. Let's try again. That basic feedback language that teachers give in English. So we're building those receptive skills of listening focused on basic words and phrases. On the other hand, we could be working with interactive. Remember, interactive listening is when you're listening to participate. So here, this might be students listening and responding with the correct gestures when they hear greetings. So if they hear someone say hello, they might start waving, or if they hear someone singing a song or chant, they can repeat back that song and chant. The same thing, responding with appropriate actions when hearing classroom instructions. If the teacher says open the book, the students open the book. So that's those very granular, very discrete objectives of learning that align to the specific standards and help our students achieve the general standards of learning. My final comment here, another reason why for these objectives we decided to use the can-do statement is we are definitely introducing teachers in Panama to the Global Scale of English Teacher Toolkit, and that is a part of the training that's taking place for teachers. So we wanted to be sure that teachers understood that the can-do statements from the Global Scale of English can be used in the classroom to inform objectives that they're working with, and making a clear distinction between specific standards and can-do statements. So now that we understand what our general standard, our specific standard, and our objectives are, well, what kind of tasks will we bring into the classroom? And this is one of the most exciting parts about curriculum design. Your next big job is going to be deciding what are some of the tasks that will really help us achieve these objectives. And here we have a few examples for you. So for example, let's say we're working on this recognizing hello and goodbye. Well, maybe we're doing that with a role play game with flashcards. The student gets a flashcard and they can see someone going like this, and then they have to role play and say hello. So that could be a quick little activity we bring in. That's a task we could do. Or an echo and response song where we have hello and goodbye. I think you all have your own favorite hello goodbye songs. Mine is like hello, hello, and so I'm not even gonna sing it, but Mary and I could get started. We came up with easily like 5 of these that were different while we were thinking about it. So did Anna Isabel, so it was fantastic. Maybe you want to do a Simon Says activity for classroom instruction. So when you want your students to gesture, open your book, they can open the book. That's a great interactive listening activity, and that absolutely aligns to that objective of responding with appropriate actions when you hear simple classroom instruction. So these tasks, they're specific, they're action oriented, and they help work our students and bring those standards to life so our students can develop the competencies. And action oriented is a key word here. You'll remember from reading both the theoretical foundation and the CARTIA document that the Common European Framework of References uses an action oriented pedagogy. So we always want to be sure that our tasks represent that action orientation. And the final piece in this journey, we've started with I realize we have our objectives here, and I color coded all of this for ease. But again, objectives, those granular can-do statements, our tasks here, those are the activities that we're doing. And then finally, we get down to outcomes. For those outcomes, this is what you're going to be able to observe, what you will be able to see that students can do. This is where you're getting into some assessment, some formative assessment, some diagnostic assessment, understanding how well your students did today. Do I need to repeat this lesson tomorrow? Did they really begin to develop some of these skills? So here you'll notice we have outcomes like understand greetings and goodbye when listening and miming an introduction scenario with peers. That's exactly what my students would be doing if they're doing a hello and goodbye role play with those flashcards. So these are going to be the specific abilities that we can observe when those tasks are completed and what our students can do after doing those different activities. And that helps us develop the standards. So that was how we essentially structured this. Again, for the CARTIA, I'll just flash back up one more time. The listening is the top standard, the general standard is the most broad, the broadest possible expression of the standard. The specific standard is the description of that in detail. And then the objectives, which will be coming next, that's part of the exciting curriculum work that you'll be doing, because you're going to be thinking of objectives that we need to accomplish in order to achieve our standards, tasks that our students will be able to do, and fun activities that will bring those standards to life. And finally, the outcomes that we'll see from all of that learning that students do. And that is what we wanted to share with you today. So I'm going to stop there. Mary, is there anything else that you want to add?
Thanks. I think you covered it. I really appreciate you explaining it. I want to repeat just sort of what seems how I'm visualizing it, that the general standards and specific standards, they're coming from us, us being Sara, Anna, and Mary.
The academic leads.
And the academic leads there. And those are nationwide. We want, like, all teachers need to learn those and recognize that that's our north, that's our goal, where we're headed, right? That's our standard, our general standard, specific standard. The objectives, tasks, and outcome are what the core groups will be working on with the support of the working groups, right? And those on some level can be localized by the teacher. You'll be giving these to the teacher, but the teachers also will be making decisions about how those learning objectives, they'll have some wiggle room, right, to how they're going to bring those into the classroom. Whereas the general standard and specific standard, there's no wiggle room. Those are for everybody nationwide. Did I get that right?
Yep. That's 100% correct. It's actually this part, the general and specific standards, is some of the most challenging, because we know once we put that out there, that can't change. I think Cristobal was my favorite at the very end of our training session in Panama, when he set up as the standards don't change. These are the standards that don't change. So everybody will be working towards that, and there is no wiggle room there. But where we do have wiggle room is the objectives on how we achieve those standards. So I agree 100%, Mary. That was a very useful additional clarification there.
Thanks. Well, one thing I want to share with everybody too is just, I think it takes time to understand and integrate this moving from general standards to the outcomes and tasks. And so I want to make sure that you realize that's why we're making this video. So if you want to come back and watch it and reference it a few times, you're welcome to. And once you start doing that work of creating the objectives and the tasks and outcomes, then you'll get back into it. You'll understand it deeper and in a different way. As you start teaching in that way, you'll experience it in a different way too. So remember, this is just this is a tool and a resource for you to, as you're beginning to become friends with all of these concepts and this process.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the next part coming up really is the most exciting part, because we've put together all of these standards, but now we have to bring them to life. Putting together a lot of cartillas with huge lists of standards is not very helpful. So the next step that we really have is making sure that teachers have everything that they need to bring that to life. And that is so exciting, because you do have a lot of wiggle room, and I cannot wait to see what exciting ways that you bring all of that action into the classrooms and for the students of Panama. So thank you so much. Do watch this, and please, the one thing I want you to take away more than anything else is, if you're still not sure and if you still have questions, please ask them. This is intricate and it's nuanced, and I promise you these kinds of conversations, even Sarah, Anna, Isabel, myself, and Mary, we even had to have a whole conversation to make sure that we were on the same page about how we were doing these things. So this is one of the more challenging aspects of curriculum design, and it's okay to be a little bit confused here. If you do find that you still have a lot of questions and you just want to be sure and ask one more time, do not hesitate, because it is complicated. It seems more complicated than it needs to be, but we do want you to know that we are very comfortable if you still have questions to reach out to us, and we're happy to answer those.
And I think the best place to ask those is either in the working groups. The second best place is in your core group. The reason I think it's important to ask in the working group, in the WhatsApp group or the working group, is so that everyone can learn from your question.
Yes.
And we are there in those groups with you. We are keeping our eye on how things are, what's evolving. And so if we see a question in that group that we can answer, we're going to come in and answer it. So
Absolutely.
please don't be shy. No question is too small. No question is too big.
No, not at all. And that's what we're here for, and that's why we're getting to kind of the most exciting work for us too, is we get to do less so that you can do more. So we'll have more time for answering questions, popping in, doing some spot checks with you as this project goes forward. So do share those questions as you have them coming up. Listen and help each other answer them. We're here to answer them as well. We all have a lot of learning to do through the next part, but it is the most exciting part of this journey together.
Right. Well, thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and your wisdom and your vast knowledge base. And thank you, everybody who's working on this curriculum. It is an honor and a joy to be working with you. And it's such a privilege for all of us to be able to do this. So thank you for your hard work.
Talk to you soon, teachers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.